I don't know about you, but for me, thinking of different aspects of the Christian faith, different traditions, different practices, some of them are really familiar with me. Communion is something that's always been very familiar with me. Baptism is something that's very familiar. One of the practices of the Christian tradition that's been more unfamiliar for me in my personal experience has been the use of liturgical calendar. The liturgy of some of other faith traditions, other Christian traditions, is something that I'm not as used to, but I think it's something that can help enrich our walk with Christ, our faith, and our journey. And it's something that is great during this season. This season begins a season of Advent, and Advent can mean a lot of things, and I think one of the biggest things is the anticipation for Christmas and some of the different aspects of what that anticipation for Christmas Day looks like. And one of the things, if you break up Advent, that factors into the season of Advent is the biblical idea of hope. And I think we can see that word and maybe have our own understanding of it, but biblically, hope isn't something that's necessarily focused on circumstances or people, but hope is something that's always rooted in what we know and trust God to be. And you can see the way that the writers use hope in the Bible in all sorts of passages, but a quick example is Psalm 130. And it says, "Out of the depths I call to you, Lord. Lord, listen to my voice and let your ears be attentive to my cry for help. Lord, if you kept an account of iniquities, Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness so that you may be revered. I wait for the Lord, I wait and put my hope in his word. I wait for the Lord more than watchmen for the morning, more than watchmen for the morning. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for there is faithful love with the Lord, and with him is redemption in abundance, and he will redeem Israel from all its iniquities." So you see in this picture, hope is more than just something of what we anticipate for the future, but it's also what you're doing in the midst of that, the waiting for something to change your present circumstances. And you read about the way that the Israelites hoped for God to do something in their circumstances, and they had rough circumstances. They were in bondage, in slavery, in exile, lost in multiple periods of their history, but they trusted in God because of God's promises to them as a people. And so for us, we've seen the reality, the culmination of that hope in Jesus, and that's what we begin to experience. But there's also another aspect of hope, because we're waiting for Christ to return. We're waiting sometimes for Christ to do something in our own lives personally that we are wrestling with and struggling with. And sometimes we put our hope in the wrong things. We don't put our hope in Christ. And so for this week, as we are getting closer and closer to Christmas, what have you put your hope in? And how is that failed you or disappointed you? Maybe you've put your hope in other people. Maybe it's in a relationship or a job or your right circumstances to change. But the question is, have you put your hope in God? And then if you haven't, what would it look like to put your hope in God, to hope and trust in what God can do and what he's promised to do, even in the midst of the things that you are struggling with and wrestling with. And so it's a very hard thing to wrestle with, the hope in light of present circumstances that aren't always great, that aren't always seem like they're going to work out. but we hope in Christ regardless.